My brother betrayed me by getting my fiancée pregnant, and my dad rewarded him with the family legacy. Now, I'm ready to make them both pay for their treachery. It was the kind of family dynamic that, from the outside, seemed picture perfect. A successful business, a father who worked hard to provide, and a home filled with love. But behind those doors, everything was falling apart. Growing up, I was always the one who did everything right. The one who took responsibility for the household, made the grades, and followed the rules. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never escape the shadow of my younger brother Alex. He was the miracle baby, the one who had survived an illness that nearly took his life. But somehow, that was his ticket to being treated as if he were made of glass. I was expected to be the strong, responsible one, perfect in every way, no room for mistakes. And Alex? He could skip school, fail a class, break things, and still, everyone would make excuses for him. It hurt, more than I cared to admit, to watch my parents dote on him while I was constantly told that I needed to be better, do better. And even when I worked tirelessly, learning the ins and outs of the family business, it was Alex who would receive the credit. "Your brother's charm really helps with customer relations," they would say, as if my dedication and hard work didn't matter. No, I had to just accept being overlooked, never fully seen. I felt invisible, like my efforts were nothing more than a background hum to the main event, which was Alex. The more I gave, the more it became clear. In this family, no matter how hard I tried, I would never be good enough. The weight of my family's expectations was suffocating. No matter how much I accomplished, it never seemed to matter. I watched as Alex, the golden child, received all the praise and attention, and I couldn't help but feel the sting of injustice. From a young age, I had learned that nothing I did would ever be enough to earn my father's true approval. My grades, my responsibility, my dedication, it all paled in comparison to Alex's charm and fragility. Every time I tried to show my worth, it was as if the ground beneath me shifted, and once again, I was standing in his shadow. There were moments, small and fleeting, when I thought maybe things would change. Maybe if I worked harder, stayed late at the office, learned more about the business, my father would see meth real me and finally give me the recognition I deserved. But each time, I was proven wrong. I watched as Alex floundered through life, barely keeping his head above water, but still, he was the one who got credit for things he didn't do. It infuriated me, but even more than that, it made me feel invisible. I was the one who never made mistakes, who kept everything together, while Alex stumbled from one failure to the next. But no one seemed to care about my success, about the business I was building, or the ways in which I was growing and improving. It didn't help that my parents constantly reinforced this. Every time they'd speak about me, it was always with a note of disappointment or criticism. "You need to try harder," they'd say. But when it came to Alex, it was always, "Don't worry, he'll get it eventually," as if his mistakes didn't matter. I had worked so hard for so long, only to realize that no matter what I did, I would always be second to Alex. And deep down, I knew that my efforts would never matter to them, never make a difference. I wasn't just invisible, I was replaceable, a mere shadow to their golden boy. The tension had been building for months, but I refused to acknowledge it, unwilling to admit that something was terribly wrong. As I watched Alex's life spiral out of control, failed business ventures, reckless decisions, I kept telling myself, this is just who he is. It's not your problem. But deep down, the resentment festered. I was working harder than ever, bringing in clients, securing big projects for the family business, and yet it was always Alex who was praised. "Your brother's charm really helped seal the deal," my father would say, and I felt the blood rush to my ears. I was the one putting in the hours, the one pushing for innovation, but none of that mattered. It was Alex's face that the clients remembered, Alex who got the credit for my work. Sophie, my fiancée, had been by my side through it all. We had built a future together, shared dreams of a life filled with success and love. But as the months passed, I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior changes I couldn't ignore. Her phone always seemed to be locked now, something that had never been a concern before. She'd make excuses when I asked about it, always quick to dismiss my worries. Alex, too, started acting strangely, showing up early to work, dressing better, being unusually polite to me. It made no sense. Was he finally growing up, or was something else at play? Then came the night when everything changed. I came home early from a job, desperate to get some rest, only to find Sophie and Alex in the office, laughing in the break room. I froze. There was a weird tension in the air, a crackling energy that felt off. When they saw me, they jumped, as if caught doing something they shouldn't. Sophie quickly explained it away as nothing, but in that moment, I knew something had happened, something that shattered the last piece of trust I had left. I walked out, the weight of betrayal sinking in, and in that instant, I realized I was no longer just fighting for my family's respect. I was fighting for my dignity. The silence that followed that night was suffocating. I couldn't stop replaying this scene in my mind. Sophie and Alex in the break room, their laughter echoing in my ears like a cruel joke. Something inside me snapped. I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to admit what my gut was screaming at me. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. The signs were all there, the late-night talks, the secretive behavior, the way Sophie started defending Alex, putting him on a pedestal while I struggled to hold everything together. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The following afternoon, Sophie called me, her voice trembling. "We need to talk," she said, the urgency in her tone immediately setting my nerves on edge. I rushed home, my heart pounding in my chest as I anticipated the worst. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her sitting in the car, her hands gripping the steering wheel as if she were holding herself together. She barely looked up when I opened the door. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. For a brief moment, the world went still. My mind raced, thinking of all the possibilities. But nothing made sense until she said the words I never thought I'd hear. "It might not be yours." My body went cold, a surge of nausea sweeping over me as everything clicked into place. I demanded to know who else it could be, and when the truth finally came spilling out, I could hardly breathe. "It was Alex," she said, her voice barely audible. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. My brother, the one I had defended, the one I had fought for. He had crossed the ultimate line. I felt my world crumble beneath me, but I didn't have time to process. Itridge took over. I stormed out, my fists clenched, and I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. My family, my future, all of it was shattered. The moment the truth hit me, everything around me started to blur. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't even feel my own body anymore. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, my mind struggling to make sense of what Sophie had just told me. "It's not his," she whispered, and everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, crumbled. Alex, my own brother, how could he do this? The rage coursing through me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. How long had they been lying to me? How could they betray me so easily? I drove in a haze, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum, the heat of anger spreading through my veins. The house, my family's home, that place where I had poured my soul into everything, was suddenly a prison. I couldn't face them, couldn't stand to look at Alex's face, knowing what I now knew. I stormed into the office, my vision red with fury, and Alex's eyes widened when he saw me. It was too late for explanations. He already knew. He could see the truth written all over my face. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair, it was in the lies, the secrets, the way he'd watched me build a future while he destroyed it. That was when I snapped. My hands clenched into fists, and before I knew it, I was charging at him. I didn't even hear my father's voice trying to stop me. Didn't hear the shouts of our employees pulling me back. I just saw red. And as Alex hit the floor, blood pouring from his nose, I knew one thing. I had lost everything. My family, my future, it was all gone. And it was all because of them. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and anger. I couldn't think, couldn't focus, couldn't get rid of the image of Alex's bloodied face, the pitiful way he tried to plead for forgiveness. I had thought I knew my brother, had believed in him, trusted him. But now all I could see was a stranger, a traitor, who had stolen not only my fiancée, but everything I had worked for. I tried to bury it, tried to move on, but the weight of the betrayal was too heavy. And then, Sophie's calls started. She texted, left voicemails, all pleading for me to talk to her, to understand, to somehow fix things. Each message made my skin crawl. She had made her choice, and now she was begging for forgiveness, acting as if the whole thing could just be erased. But how could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I ever trust her after everything she had done? The woman I thought I would marry, the one I believed was my partner in everything, had torn my world apart with one single, heart-shattering decision. I moved into my friend Mike's apartment, trying to escape the chaos, but the phone never stopped ringing. My parents, Alex, even Sophie, everyone seemed to want something from me. My father called, his voice trembling with desperation. "Son, we can fix this. We're family," he said. But his words meant nothing to me now. Family? What did that even mean anymore? I had given everything to that business, to that family, and they had thrown it all away. The worst part? I wasn't even sure I wanted to fix it anymore. I was done. I couldn't be the one who always cleaned up everyone else's mess. This was my breaking point, and I couldn't go back. My father's pleading only made it worse. I had to leave. I had to start over, and there was no turning back. The phone calls, the messages, they didn't stop. Sophie's voice on the other end of the line, always fragile, always breaking, calling me endlessly, pleading for my forgiveness. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't even bring myself to listen. How could I? How could I possibly forgive someone who had betrayed me in the worst possible way? She had shattered everything I had built, everything I had believed in. She had crossed a line I never thought she would, and now she was trying to fix it with apologies that felt as empty as the air around me. One evening, after a long, exhausting day of trying to make sense of everything, I received another text from Sophie, begging to meet. She claimed she needed to explain, to tell me everything. I could feel the tension tightening in my chest, a mix of rage and sadness that threatened to break through. I had spent so many sleepless nights wondering if I could salvage anything from this, if my heart would ever be whole again. But deep down, I knew the truth. Nothing could fix this. I arrived at the cafe where we had agreed to meet, my heart pounding, my body on edge. When I saw her, sitting at a corner table, her face pale and her eyes red from crying, I almost didn't recognize her. This was the woman I thought I would spend my life with? She looked so fragile, so small, but it didn't matter. The love I once had for her was gone, replaced by something much darker. "Sophie," I began, my voice barely a whisper, but sharp as a knife. "You've destroyed everything. You've taken my trust, my future, and thrown it all away." She started to speak, but I cut her off. I couldn't bear to hear it. I couldn't hear the excuses, the pleas, not anymore. I turned and walked away, the weight of what was happening crashing down on me. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done. There would be no more second chances, no more pretending. I couldn't be part of this broken family any longer. And in that moment, I finally knew that my future was mine to reclaim. The weight of the decision was suffocating. I had walked away from Sophie, from Alex, from everything I thought I knew about my family. But even after I left, their betrayal continued to echo in my mind, gnawing at me, filling the empty spaces where my trust once lived. I had hoped that walking away would give me peace, that it would free me from the emotional prison I had been living in. But instead, I was consumed by the question show. Long had they been seeing each other? How could they betray me like this? right under my nose. Then came the call that shattered any remnants of hope. Sophie's voice, broken and frantic, came through the phone. "I need to tell you something," she said, her words stumbling over each other, the panic in her voice palpable. It's important." I could feel my blood running cold as I listened to her, the knot in my stomach tightening with every word. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She hesitated, and when she finally spoke, it was like a knife twisting in my chest. "I'm pregnant," she said. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was spinning, my thoughts a blur. I had thought the worst had already happened, but this was a new level of hell. "Tell me it's not Alex's," I demanded, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Sophie's silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt everything inside me freeze. The world around me seemed to fall away as the crushing reality set in. The man I had called my brother, the one I had defended, had stolen everything from me. The betrayal wasn't just about Sophie anymore, it was about Alex, too. I wanted to scream, to punch something, anything. But instead, I was left standing there, numb, as the truth shattered the last part of my heart. The destruction of everything I had believed in was complete. I didn't know what I expected when I walked into that office. Maybe I thought there would be an explanation, some apology, some form of remorse from Alex. But as soon as I saw him sitting there, a smug, almost satisfied look on his face, I knew that hope was as foolish as everything else I had believed. I stood in the doorway for a moment, the anger building in me like a storm waiting to break. My fists were clenched, and my breath came in shallow gasps. I had never wanted to hurt anyone, not like this, but the truth was unbearable. He looked up at me, eyes widening slightly when he saw the fury in mine. "Bro, we need to talk," he said, his voice attempting to sound calm, but I could hear the tremble beneath it. It wasn't the kind of tone I expected from him. I had always seen him as the reckless, charming younger brother, but today, he seemed like a man caught in the web of his own lies. I stepped into the room, each movement deliberate, my heart pounding in my chest. "Talk?" I spat, my voice laced with venom. "You have nothing to say to me. You've taken everything from me, Alex. My fiancée, my trust, my future. You've destroyed it all." My words hung in the air, thick with accusation and hurt. Alex stood up slowly, his hands held out in a feeble attempt to calm me. "It's not what you think," he began, but I couldn't let him finish. I was done listening to his excuses, his lies. "You're right about one thing," I interrupted, my voice cold as ice. "It's not what I think, because I never thought you would be capable of this. I never thought my own brother would stab me in the back like this." Before I could stop myself, I lunged at him, the rage consuming me. I didn't care that this was my family anymore. The man standing in front of me wasn't family. He was a traitor. As I threw my first punch, all I could think was that everything I had worked for, everything I believed in, had been destroyed by the very people I trusted most. The storm inside me hadn't calmed, not even a little. Walking away from my family, from the business I had poured my heart and soul into, felt like a betrayal of its own. But the anger was too much. The betrayal was too deep. I thought leaving would somehow give me peace, but all it did was amplify the deafening silence. I couldn't escape the images of Alex's smug face, the betrayal in Sophie's tear-streaked eyes. I kept replaying that night, her voice telling me it wasn't his baby, but the truth hung over me like a dark cloud. The phone buzzed again, another missed call from my parents. I had turned off my phone for a while, trying to drown out the chaos. But the constant ringing, the desperate texts from Sophie, from my mother, pulling me back, made me feel cornered. They wanted me to fix it. They wanted me to forgive. But how could I? How could I return to the wreckage they had left behind? And then came my father's call. The desperation in his voice was palpable. "Son, we need to talk. Please." But there was no apology, no acknowledgement of how deeply they had wronged me. His voice cracked as he pleaded, trying to pull me back into the mess they had made. "We can fix this. It's not too late to make things right." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that it was too late, that everything was broken beyond repair. But instead, I sat in the silence, fighting back the tears of rage. The truth was clear. I couldn't go back. The life I had known was over, and I wasn't going to be the one who tried to put the pieces together. I had to move on. I had to leave it all behind. But the pain of knowing they would never understand, the pain of knowing they had chosen Alex over me, was unbearable. The weeks after I walked away felt like I was living in a fog, every part of my life spinning out of control. I had cut ties with my family, but it was impossible to escape the shadow of what had happened. It was like the betrayal kept following me, gnawing at me from the inside. I threw myself into my work, trying to find some semblance of normalcy. But every time I thought I was getting a grip, I was reminded of what I had lost. The family business, the reputation I'd built. Sophie, everything was slipping through my fingers, and it felt like there was no way to stop it. And then came the message that I never expected. My father called again, but this time, his voice was different. It was weak, trembling, and I could hear the fear in his words. "Son, I need you. It's bad. Alex has destroyed everything." Those words hit me like a slap in the face. I didn't know whether to feel satisfaction or guilt, but all I felt was numb. Alex had done exactly what I knew he would, destroyed everything in his path. I thought I could escape the family drama, but now they were dragging me back in. I agreed to meet him, not because I wanted to fix things, but because I needed to hear it from him. When I walked into that room, the sight of my father defeated, broken, was almost too much. His pride had always been everything to him, and now it was all gone, laid to waste by Alex's reckless greed and incompetence. "I should have listened to you," my father admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I thought I was doing the right thing. I stood there, a wave of anger washing over me. But this time, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving I was right. It was about the fact that everything I had worked for was ruined, and there was nothing left to salvage. The business, the family, none of it mattered anymore. I had to walk away, for good. And this time, I knew it wasn't just my family falling apart, it was me too. As I sat there, listening to my father's broken words, something inside me finally snapped. I had spent months trying to piece together what had happened, trying to make sense of the wreckage left in the wake of Alex's betrayal. But now, standing in front of my father, his face pale, his eyes filled with regret, I realized there was nothing left to fix. No apologies could repair the damage. No second chances could bring back the trust I once had in my family. It was all gone. I stood up, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me. "I never wanted it to end like this," my father said, his voice barely audible, but it didn't matter anymore. I had already made my decision. "It's too late for apologies," I replied, my voice cold and steady. Every part of me wanted to scream at him, to make him feel the pain I had felt, but I held it in, the anger simmering beneath the surface. "You gave everything to Alex," I continued, my words laced with contempt. "Even after he destroyed everything you built, you chose him over me, and that's something I can never forget." My father's face crumpled, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his choices. He reached out, as if to touch me, to hold on to whatever scraps of father and son we had left. But I pulled away. I couldn't let him in anymore. "You made your choice," I said, the words final. "And now, I have to make mine." I turned to walk away, but as I did, I caught one last glimpse of the family I had tried so hard to protect. They were all there, me, father, my mother, Alexandre. It hit me. I had no place in that world anymore. The ties that bound us together had been severed, and I was free to rebuild my life, free to find peace. But it wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to come without cost. My family was gone, and the only thing left was me, and that was all I needed.